Before you decide what this audiobook means, allow yourself to pause for a moment, not to analyze what you are about to hear, not to judge whether it applies to you, and not to rush ahead looking for conclusions. Just pause. In that pause, something subtle but important happens. The constant pressure to react begins to soften. The background noise of daily life loosens its grip, and your attention gently turns inward. That shift, small as it may seem, is the doorway to everything that follows. Consider this question carefully. How many times in your life have you known something before you could explain it? Not guessed it, not hoped it was true, but known it in a way that felt complete and immediate. The kind of knowing that does not arrive through logic or reasoning, but appears fully formed, as if it were delivered from a deeper place inside you. There was no effort involved, no step-by-step thinking, and no internal debate. The knowing simply appeared, calm and certain, long before words were available to describe it. You may recognize this from moments that felt ordinary at the time, but revealed their meaning later. Perhaps you chose a different route one day for no obvious reason, only to discover afterward that you avoided a problem without realizing it. Perhaps you felt an unexplained resistance to a decision that looked perfect on paper, and later understood why moving forward would have created unnecessary complications. Perhaps you met someone and immediately sensed something in the atmosphere, a subtle shift in energy, before any conversation had taken place. At the time, you may not have trusted it, but later the accuracy of that feeling became impossible to ignore. These moments are not rare. They happen to almost everyone. What is rare is learning to respect them. Most people are taught very early in life to dismiss this kind of inner knowing. They are encouraged to explain everything, justify every feeling, and rely only on what can be measured, proven, or defended in conversation. Over time, the quiet signals are pushed aside, not because they are wrong, but because they do not fit neatly into the rules of modern thinking. The truth is not that you lack guidance. The truth is that you were trained to ignore it. Modern life rewards what is loud, urgent, visible, and measurable. It teaches you to trust numbers more than sensations, opinions more than instincts, and external validation more than internal alignment. You are taught to explain yourself constantly, to defend your choices, and to prove your worth through performance. In that environment, subtle inner signals begin to feel unreliable, even suspicious. Slowly, you learn to override them with logic, comparison, and fear of being wrong. Yet despite this conditioning, your life has always been shaped more by what happens inside you than by anything you can point to on the outside. Your expectations quietly influence the choices you make. Your inner dialogue shapes how you interpret events. Your emotional habits determine what feels possible or impossible before you even try. Your private images of success, failure, safety, and danger operate behind the scenes, guiding your behavior without asking for permission. This is not philosophy, and it is not abstract thinking. It is cause and effect. The inner world produces patterns, and those patterns shape the outer results of your life. Your experiences are not random. They follow the tone, direction, and assumptions you carry within yourself. In the same way that a shadow follows the movement of a body, your outer life follows the state of your inner world. It may not follow immediately, and it may not follow neatly, but it follows with consistency. When you repeatedly imagine loss, your body learns fear. When you rehearse rejection internally, your mind becomes skilled at finding proof of it. When your inner dialogue is filled with hesitation, self-criticism, or defeat, your nervous system begins to expect obstacles before you even begin. Over time, these expectations shape your decisions, your timing, and your tolerance for discomfort. Without realizing it, you begin to live inside a loop that feels familiar, even when it is limiting. Beneath the noise of modern life, beneath constant stimulation, endless scrolling, stress, and distraction, there are abilities you once used naturally. These are not mystical powers, and they are not supernatural gifts. They are functions of consciousness that become stronger when the mind is disciplined and the inner world becomes coherent. Long before life became as fast and crowded as it is now, human beings relied on these abilities to navigate uncertainty, sense danger, recognize opportunity, and remain aligned with their environment. You did not lose these abilities. They did not disappear. They were simply neglected. When attention is constantly pulled outward, the inner world becomes chaotic. Signals are drowned out by noise. Subtle sensations are overridden by urgency. Intuition is confused with anxiety, and inner guidance is mistaken for irrational fear. Over time, this creates a life driven by reaction instead of intention. Choices are made under pressure. Emotions are managed after they explode rather than before they arise. Life begins to feel like something that happens to you rather than something you participate in consciously. This audiobook is an invitation to return to the control room. The control room is not a place of domination or force. It is the place of awareness, regulation, and direction. It is where you learn to observe your inner world instead of being controlled by it. It is where you recognize patterns instead of repeating them unconsciously. It is where you begin to guide your attention, emotions, and inner dialogue with clarity rather than leaving them to chance. In this audiobook, you are not learning something entirely new. You are remembering something ancient. You are reconnecting with 7 inner abilities that already operate within you. Sometimes they appear randomly. Sometimes they show up only in moments of crisis. Sometimes you sense them briefly and then dismiss them. The difference now is that you will learn to recognize them, train them, and use them deliberately. These abilities are not designed to control other people, escape reality, or create illusions of power. They exist to help you master the one thing that shapes your experience of reality first, your inner state. When your inner state is chaotic, life feels overwhelming. When your inner state is coherent, life becomes navigable even when it is difficult. As you listen, you may notice something interesting. The people who rise after collapse, the people who rebuild without becoming bitter, and the people who become strong without becoming rigid all share something in common. They do not treat their inner life as an afterthought. They guard it, they direct it, they train it. They do not wait for confidence to appear. They rehearse it. They do not wait for luck to change their circumstances. They prepare their minds to recognize opportunity when it appears. They understand something most people never learn. Life responds to inner direction over time. This does not mean that life becomes perfect. It does not mean challenges disappear or pain is avoided. It means that you stop being easily controlled by circumstances. You become less reactive and more intentional. You begin to experience fewer internal battles and more internal clarity. Decisions feel cleaner, boundaries become easier, timing improves, and a quiet sense of self-trust begins to return. Before we go further, there is an agreement you must make with yourself. You do not need to believe everything you hear. Blind belief is not required here. Your role is not to accept ideas because they sound impressive or comforting. Your role is to listen as someone testing principles. Notice what resonates. Apply what feels practical. Experiment with what strengthens you. Leave what does not serve you. When you begin directing your inner world with intention, something subtle but undeniable begins to happen. Life starts responding, not always with dramatic changes, but with quiet shifts. Decisions become clearer, reactions become smaller, opportunities appear with better timing, conversations change tone. You feel calmer in situations that used to overwhelm you. Doors open because you are no longer radiating hesitation or doubt. Once you experience this, even once, something changes permanently. You stop seeing yourself as someone waiting for life to improve, and you begin to recognize your role in shaping how life unfolds. That recognition is not loud or dramatic. It is steady, grounding, and deeply stabilizing. This is where we begin. We begin by returning attention to the inner world, not as a place of mystery, but as a system that can be trained. We begin by learning how subtle signals work, how inner patterns form, and how coherence replaces chaos. We begin by remembering that power does not come from controlling the outside world, but from mastering the state you bring into it. As you continue listening, allow yourself to stay present rather than searching for results. Let understanding unfold gradually. This is not entertainment meant to pass the time. This is reinforcement meant to build something lasting. The inner world responds to repetition, consistency, and respect. And the more you return to it with intention, the more clearly it begins to respond. This is not the beginning of something new. It is the return to something you have always carried. And now we move forward. Chapter 1. The Power of Inner Knowing. There is a voice inside you that speaks before thought has time to form. It does not analyze situations, weigh pros and cons, or search for explanations. It does not argue with you or try to convince you. It does not need evidence or approval. It simply knows. This voice communicates quietly, often through feeling rather than language, and it delivers its message in a way that feels immediate and complete. By the time your conscious mind begins to think about what is happening, the knowing has already arrived. Most people recognize this voice, at least briefly, but very few people trust it. They hear it, feel it, or sense it, and then talk themselves out of it within seconds. Logic rushes in, explaining why the feeling is unreasonable. Fear joins the conversation, warning about consequences. Social conditioning adds its opinion, reminding you to be realistic, polite, cautious, or agreeable. Within moments, the original signal is buried beneath noise, and the decision is handed back to habit rather than awareness. Inner knowing is not mystical, supernatural, or imaginary. It is not a gift given to a few special people and withheld from others. It is a natural function of the human mind. More specifically, it is the subconscious mind processing information far faster and far more efficiently than conscious thought can manage. While your conscious mind focuses on a narrow stream of details, your subconscious is constantly absorbing tone, timing, patterns, emotional history, inconsistencies, micro expressions. body language, and subtle changes in energy. It notices what does not align long before logic can explain why. Because the subconscious works below the level of language, it delivers its conclusions as sensations rather than sentences. You may experience it as a pull forward towards something that feels right or a pull away from something that feels wrong. Sometimes it appears as a calm sense of certainty and sometimes as a quiet resistance that cannot be explained. It may feel like expansion, lightness, contraction, or heaviness. These sensations are not random. They are the mind's way of communicating a complex calculation without overwhelming you with data. The problem is not that people lack intuition. The problem is that most people live in constant mental noise. Their attention is divided, overstimulated, and restless. They are thinking while listening, scrolling while deciding, worrying while observing, and rushing while evaluating. In that state, subtle signals are drowned out. A distracted mind cannot hear a whisper, no matter how accurate that whisper may be. Inner knowing requires space, and space requires stillness. Stillness does not mean withdrawing from life or sitting in silence for hours. It means reducing internal interference long enough to allow the signal to surface. When the conscious mind stops shouting, the subconscious can finally be heard. This is why inner knowing often appears in quiet moments, such as during a walk, in the shower, late at night, or in the brief pause before sleep. It is not that the signal suddenly appears in those moments. It is that the noise finally recedes. One of the most important skills you can develop is learning the difference between fear and intuition. Many people confuse the two, and that confusion creates years of unnecessary struggle. Fear is loud, urgent, and repetitive. It pushes, pressures, and demands immediate action. It creates mental spinning and emotional tension. Intuition, on the other hand, is calm and precise. It does not shout. It does not argue. It simply presents a direction and then remains quiet. Fear creates confusion and urgency. Intuition creates clarity and calm, even when it guides you towards something challenging. This distinction alone can change your life. When you learn to recognize the texture of intuition, you stop mistaking anxiety for guidance. You stop reacting to emotional noise and start responding to inner alignment. Decisions become cleaner even when they are difficult. You may still feel discomfort, but the discomfort feels purposeful rather than chaotic. That is how you know the signal is real. It is also important to understand that inner knowing is not designed to control other people or predict their behavior. It is not meant to give you power over external events. Its purpose is far simpler and far more important. Inner knowing exists to govern you. It guides your choices, your boundaries, your timing, and your direction. When used correctly, it helps you move through life with less resistance and fewer regrets, because you are acting in alignment with information you already possess. Many people believe they are ignoring intuition because they are weak or undisciplined, but the truth is more subtle. Most people have been conditioned away from trusting themselves. From an early age, they were taught to defer to authority, to suppress internal signals that did not fit expectations, and to prioritize approval over alignment. Over time, this creates a habit of self-doubt. The inner signal still arrives, but it is quickly overridden by learned patterns of hesitation and second-guessing. Another important distinction must be made here. Not every internal sensation is intuition. The subconscious mind operates through repetition and emotion, which means it can also carry conditioning. If you have spent years rehearsing fear, your mind may interpret neutral situations as threats. If you have spent years expecting rejection, you may sense rejection before it exists. That is not intuition. That is programming. True inner knowing has a different quality. It is clean, calm, and non-dramatic. It does not spiral or exaggerate. It simply indicates direction. This is why stillness is not only about quieting noise, but also about clarity. When the mind becomes calmer, patterns become easier to distinguish. You begin to notice whether a sensation feels frantic or grounded, reactive or steady. Over time, this awareness sharpens. You start trusting yourself again, not because you force confidence, but because experience confirms the signal's accuracy. Inner knowing strengthens through use. When you ignore it repeatedly, the signal becomes quieter, not as punishment, but because the mind learns that it is not being respected. When you act on it, even in small ways, the signal becomes clearer. You are teaching your subconscious that its input matters. That cooperation between conscious choice and subconscious guidance creates coherence, and coherence creates power. There is also an ethical dimension to this ability. Inner knowing remains clear only when it is used for alignment rather than manipulation. When you attempt to use sensitivity to control, dominate, or gain advantage over others, perception becomes distorted. Ego interferes with clarity. You begin hearing what you want to hear rather than what is true. For this reason, inner knowing must always be grounded in self-governance rather than external control. Its purpose is to guide your actions, not to manage other people's behavior. It is also important to understand that inner knowing does not always lead you toward comfort. Sometimes it guides you toward growth, and growth often feels unfamiliar. Discomfort does not automatically mean something is wrong. The key question is not whether something scares you, but whether it feels clean. A clean fear often leads to expansion. A dirty yes often leads to regret. Learning this distinction develops discernment, which is one of the most valuable inner skills you can possess. As you train this ability, you may notice fewer dramatic moments and more quiet adjustments. You may send fewer unnecessary messages, avoid conflicts that do not need to happen, and make decisions with less internal debate. These changes may seem small, but over time they accumulate into a very different life experience. You waste less energy, you recover faster, you feel more grounded in your choices. Inner knowing does not remove uncertainty from life. What it removes is unnecessary confusion. It does not promise that every decision will be easy or painless. It ensures that your decisions are aligned with the information already available to you. That alignment creates a sense of integrity, and integrity creates inner stability. As you move forward through this audiobook, remember that this ability is already active within you. You are not trying to create something new. You are learning to recognize, respect, and refine something that has always been present. When you do, you begin living less from reaction and more from intention. And that shift, quiet as it may be, changes everything. This is the power of inner knowing. Chapter 2, The Power of Emotional Resonance. Before words are spoken, something else is already communicating. Long before logic forms an opinion or language gives shape to meaning, your body and nervous system register a state, You feel it when you walk into a room and sense tension without seeing an obvious cause. You feel it when a conversation leaves you unexpectedly tired, even though nothing difficult was said. You feel it when someone's presence brings calm or unease before they have done anything at all. This is not imagination, and it is not overthinking. It is emotional resonance, the ability to sense what is unspoken. Most people believe they react emotionally because something happens, but in many situations, the feeling comes first. The body detects subtle information faster than the mind can interpret it. Tone of voice, rhythm of speech, posture, breathing patterns, facial tension, and emotional undercurrents are all processed automatically. The conscious mind may miss these details, but the subconscious never does. It gathers them instantly and delivers the result as a feeling. That feeling is the message. Emotional resonance is often misunderstood, especially by those who experience it strongly. Many people who are sensitive believe there is something wrong with them. They say they absorb other people's moods, feel overwhelmed in crowds, or become drained after certain interactions. They assume sensitivity is a weakness that must be managed or hidden. The truth is more precise. Sensitivity itself is not the problem. Untrained sensitivity is. When emotional resonance is untrained, you absorb what you perceive. You walk into a room filled with anxiety and suddenly feel anxious yourself. You speak to someone who is emotionally burdened and leave feeling heavy even though nothing personal was shared. You encounter bitterness, stress, or chaos and begin carrying it as if it belongs to you. This absorption creates confusion because you no longer know which emotions are yours and which are not. When emotional resonance is trained, something very different happens. You still perceive the state, but you do not merge with it. You observe rather than absorb. The information remains clear, but it no longer overwhelms you. You can sense tension without becoming tense, recognize sadness without sinking into it, and detect instability without losing your own center. This is where resonance becomes power instead of burden. The fundamental rule of emotional resonance is simple but essential. You are not required to carry what you can perceive. Awareness does not demand absorption. Perception does not require ownership. Just because you can feel something does not mean it belongs to you or that you must respond to it internally. This distinction alone can restore a tremendous amount of energy and clarity. Resonance becomes power when you learn to return to your own center instead of merging with what you sense. Centering is not emotional withdrawal or indifference. It is the ability to remain anchored in your own state while gathering information from the environment. When you are centered, sensitivity becomes intelligence rather than vulnerability. You receive signals clearly without being destabilized by them. This ability develops through discernment without judgment. Judgment clouds perception because it adds ego, stories, and assumptions. Discernment, on the other hand, is clean and neutral. It simply recognizes what is present without needing to label it as good or bad. When you sense emotional tension in someone, discernment allows you to understand that something is happening without condemning them or yourself. Awareness without absorption keeps the signal clear and usable. One of the most important aspects of emotional resonance is understanding that communication is not primarily verbal. Words are only a small layer of interaction. Beneath them is the emotional field people carry with them. What they rehearse privately, what they suppress, what they fear, and what they desire all contribute to the state they project. People can carefully edit their words and behavior, but it is much harder to hide their internal state from someone whose sensitivity is awake. This is why you sometimes sense dishonesty even when a story sounds logical. It is why you feel sadness beneath someone's laughter or tension beneath politeness. It is why certain environments feel heavy while others feel supportive, even when nothing obvious is happening. Emotional resonance reads the state beneath appearances, and the state is what drives outcomes. However, without training, this ability can easily become exhausting. You may begin to mistake other people's emotions for your own. You may assume that something is wrong with you when the discomfort you feel is actually coming from the environment. Over time, this confusion can lead to self-doubt, emotional fatigue, and withdrawal from situations that require presence. The solution is not to shut down sensitivity, but to refine it. The first skill that changes everything is the ability to return to center quickly. When you return to center, emotional resonance shifts from infection to information. The feeling remains perceptible, but it no longer spreads inside you. You remain yourself while understanding what is happening around you. Returning to center is not complicated, but it requires intention. It often begins with awareness of the body. A slow breath, a release of tension, or a brief internal reminder can signal the nervous system to stop merging and start observing. When the body settles, clarity returns. This does not remove empathy or compassion. It strengthens them by preventing overwhelm. Another essential aspect of this power is learning to ask the right internal questions. When you feel a sudden emotional shift, instead of reacting, you can ask whether the feeling belongs to you. This question is not answered through analysis, but through sensation. If the feeling is yours, it remains even when you step back and breathe. If it is not yours, you will often feel a subtle separation as soon as you acknowledge it. That separation is not rejection, it is boundary. Boundary does not mean hardness or distance. It means sovereignty. Sovereignty is the foundation of all higher inner abilities. Without it, sensitivity becomes chaos. With it, sensitivity becomes guidance. You are able to engage deeply with the world without losing yourself inside it. There is an ethical dimension to emotional resonance that must be respected. As perception sharpens, it becomes easy to see what others hide. You begin noticing unspoken competition, quiet resentment, masked insecurity, and emotional incongruence. Without maturity, this can lead to cynicism or superiority. You may start judging people for what you sense, assuming your perception makes you above them. This corrupts the ability immediately. Emotional resonance is not meant to condemn. It is meant to understand. Often what you sense in others is not malice, but pain, not manipulation, but fear, not arrogance, but insecurity. When used with humility, resonance increases compassion without sacrificing clarity. When used with ego, it distorts perception and creates isolation. This ability is not a weapon. It is a compass. A weapon is used to dominate. A compass is used to orient. Emotional resonance helps you navigate relationships, environments, and situations with greater awareness. It informs your boundaries, your timing, and your level of engagement. It helps you choose where to invest energy and where to withdraw without guilt. There is also a responsibility that comes with heightened sensitivity. You must become intentional about your inputs. Just as you would not feed your body random food and expect health, you cannot consume random emotional environments and expect inner clarity. Conversations, media, environments, and relationships all carry emotional states. When you are sensitive, those states influence you more strongly. This does not mean isolating yourself from the world. It means becoming selective. You learn to limit exposure to environments that constantly drain you. You choose relationships that elevate rather than destabilize your state. You stop normalizing chronic overstimulation, emotional chaos, and burnout. You recognize that your inner state is not a luxury, it is the foundation of perception. As your state becomes clearer, your emotional resonance becomes more precise. You no longer feel overwhelmed by everything. Instead, you notice patterns. You sense when a conversation has an agenda, when a space carries unresolved tension, or when a situation is aligned or misaligned with your well-being. This awareness allows you to respond intentionally rather than reactively. Over time, this changes how you move through life. You begin trusting your sense of timing. You enter fewer unnecessary conflicts. You recover faster after challenging interactions. You feel less need to explain yourself and more comfort in quiet clarity. Emotional resonance, when trained, reduces drama rather than increasing it. It is important to remember that this ability develops gradually. There is no sudden awakening that makes everything easy. There are small moments of recognition, small adjustments, and repeated returns to center. Each time you observe without absorbing, the system learns. Each time you choose awareness over reaction, the boundary strengthens. This is how sensitivity transforms from burden into intelligence. As you continue through this audiobook, emotional resonance will connect naturally with the other abilities you will explore. Inner knowing becomes clearer when emotional noise is reduced. The inner voice becomes steadier when the state is protected. Focus becomes easier when energy is not constantly leaking into environments that drain you. These abilities work together, reinforcing one another. The power of emotional resonance is not about becoming more affected by the world. It is about becoming more aware without losing stability. It allows you to feel deeply while remaining grounded, to understand without absorbing, and to navigate complexity without confusion. This is not weakness. This is refinement. This is the power of emotional resonance. Chapter 3, The Power of the Inner Image. Inside you, there is a picture constantly playing. It does not exist on a screen, and it is not something you consciously choose most of the time. It lives in the private theater of your mind, running quietly in the background, shaping how you see yourself, how you interpret situations, and how you move through the world. This picture is not a single image, but a collection of scenes, expectations, and assumptions that together form your inner sense of who you are and what life is likely to give you. This inner picture negotiates with reality on your behalf. It influences what you notice and what you overlook. It shapes how confident or hesitant you feel before you act. It determines what feels normal, what feels possible, and what feels out of reach. Even when you consciously say you want something different, this deeper image continues to guide your behavior unless it is deliberately changed. The mind seeks consistency, and it will always move you back toward the picture you carry inside. Most people do not fail because they lack talent, intelligence, or opportunity. They fail because their inner image contradicts their desire. They say they want change, but they picture struggle. They say they want freedom, but they imagine limitation. They say they want success, but they see themselves failing, being judged, or being exposed. These images may not be deliberate, but they are repeated, and repetition gives them power. The subconscious mind does not respond primarily to words. It responds to images charged with emotion and reinforced through repetition. You can tell yourself that you want a better life hundreds of times, but if the image you repeatedly rehearse is one of defeat, scarcity, or invisibility, the subconscious will organize your behavior around that image instead. It does this not to sabotage you, but to maintain internal consistency. The mind prefers what is familiar over what is desired. This is why behavior often feels difficult to change through willpower alone. On the surface, you may push yourself to act differently, but beneath that effort, the old picture continues to pull you back. You start strong and then lose momentum. You make plans and then hesitate. You feel motivated and then doubt returns. The problem is not a lack of discipline. The problem is that your actions are fighting an image that has not been updated. When the inner image changes, behavior changes naturally, not through force, but through alignment. When the picture inside you matches the direction you want to move, effort feels cleaner and more sustainable. You no longer need to constantly motivate yourself because acting in alignment feels more comfortable than returning to the old pattern. This is how real transformation happens. It does not begin with pressure, it begins with perception. Your life does not reflect what you want, it reflects what you expect. Expectation is not something you declare out loud. It is something you carry quietly. It is revealed in how you prepare, how you hesitate, and how you respond to setbacks. Expectation lives in your inner image, and that image trains your attention. You begin noticing evidence that supports what you already believe is likely. Over time, this creates a self-reinforcing loop. The mind filters reality constantly. There is too much information to process, so the subconscious selects what to highlight. It highlights what matches the inner picture. If your picture is that life is difficult and people are unreliable, you will notice difficulty and unreliability everywhere. If your picture is that opportunities appear when you are prepared, you will begin noticing openings that were always there, but previously ignored. The external world may not change immediately, but your experience of it will. Many people unknowingly use this power against themselves. They rehearse worst-case scenarios daily without realizing it. They imagine failure before meetings, rejection before conversations, and loss before taking risks. They replay old embarrassments and disappointments as if they are still happening. Each time they do this, they reinforce the same inner image. Then they wonder why confidence feels forced and optimism feels fake. It feels fake because the subconscious has been trained on the opposite picture. The goal is not to replace negative images with unrealistic fantasies. The subconscious rejects what feels false. The goal is to create a new inner image that feels clean, believable, and consistent with the identity you are becoming. This requires discipline, but not obsession. It requires intention, not constant effort. The mind learns through repetition, not through intensity. The inner image works best when it is built through scenes rather than statements. The subconscious understands moments better than lectures. A scene implies reality without arguing for it. For example, imagining yourself calmly finishing a task and feeling quiet satisfaction is more powerful than telling yourself repeatedly that you are productive. The image carries emotional tone, and emotion is what anchors the pattern. Emotion is the ink that writes the image into the subconscious. Without emotion, an image remains weak. Without repetition, it fades. When emotion and repetition combine, the image begins to feel familiar. Familiarity is what the subconscious accepts as normal. Once something feels normal internally, behavior shifts automatically to match it. As the inner image changes, subtle changes begin to appear. You speak differently without planning it. You tolerate less disrespect without rehearsing boundaries. You notice opportunities you would have ignored before. You recover from setbacks more quickly because the image of yourself is no longer fragile. These shifts are not dramatic, but they are consistent. Over time, consistency creates momentum. It is important to understand that changing the inner image does not mean ignoring reality. It means updating the lens through which you interpret reality. Circumstances are often delayed reflections of old inner pictures. When you begin changing the image, the external world may not respond immediately. This delay causes many people to give up too soon. They look for instant proof and assume the process is not working. In reality, the system is recalibrating. Inner change is the cause. Outer change is the effect. The effect always arrives later. This is why patience is part of discipline. When you plant a seed, you do not dig it up every day to check if it is growing. You trust the process and continue caring for the soil. The same principle applies here. You measure progress not by dramatic external results, but by internal shifts. Are you calmer? Are you clearer? Are you making better decisions? Are you acting with more consistency? These are signs that the image is taking root. There is also an ethical dimension to the power of the inner image. It is not a tool for escaping responsibility. The image must align with behavior. Imagining success while remaining undisciplined creates inner conflict. Imagining confidence while avoiding growth weakens trust. The correct approach is to pair the image with small actions that reinforce it. Action provides proof, and proof strengthens belief. Each small action becomes evidence for the new image. Over time, the subconscious begins to trust the direction. Trust is what allows the image to stabilize. When the subconscious trusts you, resistance decreases. Effort becomes smoother, focus becomes easier. This is not because life becomes easier, but because you stop fighting yourself internally. The inner image also influences how you interpret challenges. When your image is weak, challenges feel like threats. When your image is stable, challenges feel like information. The same event can produce anxiety or clarity depending on the picture you carry inside. This shift alone can change how you experience stress, failure, and uncertainty. As you continue through this audiobook, the power of the inner image will connect with the other abilities you are learning. Inner knowing becomes clearer when the image is aligned. The inner voice becomes more supportive when the image is stable. Focused will become sustainable when the image provides direction. The body relaxes when the image signals safety instead of threat. These abilities do not work in isolation. They reinforce each other. The power of the inner image is not about pretending life is perfect. It is about choosing the picture that guides your behavior toward the life you want to build. It is about replacing unconscious repetition with deliberate rehearsal. When you do this consistently, the inner world and outer world begin to move in the same direction. This is not force. This is alignment. This is the power of the inner image. Chapter 4: The Power of the Dreaming Mind. When you fall asleep, something important happens that most people never truly consider. The conscious mind, which spends the day analyzing, judging, planning, and defending, begins to loosen its grip. The constant commentary quiets. The need to control outcomes fades. In that softening, another intelligence steps forward. The deeper mind, which has been working silently all day, finally has the space to speak in its own language. That language is not logic or explanation. It is symbol, feeling, scene, and repetition. Dreams are not random images stitched together by chance. They are communication. They are not meant to entertain you, confuse you, or predict the future in dramatic ways. They are diagnostic messages from the subconscious, revealing what you are rehearsing internally when you are awake. They show patterns, emotional states, unresolved tension, and hidden beliefs that may never reach conscious awareness during the day. In this sense, dreams are not predictions, they are diagnosis. The dreaming mind reveals what the waking mind avoids. During the day, it is easy to distract yourself, rationalize discomfort, or suppress emotions that feel inconvenient. You can stay busy, scroll endlessly, talk yourself out of feelings, or postpone difficult truths. At night, those defenses relax. The subconscious takes the material you have been rehearsing and presents it in images because images are the language it understands best. What you experience in dreams is not random chaos. It is organized information presented without censorship. This is why dreams often feel emotionally intense, even when the images themselves seem strange or illogical. The emotional tone of a dream is more important than the literal events. A dream about being late, losing something, or being unprepared often carries a feeling of pressure or fear. A dream about flying, arriving somewhere safely, or being supported often carries a feeling of ease or confidence. These feelings are not accidents. They reflect the emotional patterns your nervous system has been practicing. When you respect the dreaming mind, it becomes guidance. When you ignore it, it becomes noise. Many people dismiss dreams as meaningless because they do not immediately understand them. Others overanalyze symbols, trying to decode every detail intellectually. Both approaches miss the point. Dreams are not puzzles to solve with logic. They are messages to be felt, recognized, and applied through awareness. The dreaming mind does not speak in universal symbols with fixed meanings. A symbol that represents freedom for one person may represent fear for another, depending on personal history and emotional context. The true message of a dream is found not in the object itself, but in the sensation it produces. The feeling is the key. The feeling reveals what state you are rehearsing internally, and that state is shaping your waking life. Your daily life is built on unconscious rehearsals. You rehearse worry, self-doubt, urgency, conflict, scarcity, or control without realizing it. Even when you do not speak these thoughts aloud, the emotional tone is repeated. The subconscious records repetition, not intention. At night, it translates those rehearsals into images so they can be seen more clearly. A dream of being chased may reflect avoidance. A dream of being trapped may reflect pressure. A dream of searching may reflect uncertainty. The dreaming mind is holding up a mirror. The real power of dreams is not in fortune-telling, it is in self-awareness. When you recognize the pattern a dream is revealing, you gain the opportunity to change it. Awareness breaks unconscious repetition. Once a pattern is conscious, it can be redirected. This is how dreams become a tool for growth rather than a source of confusion. You can also train the dreaming mind to become more cooperative and useful. This does not require rituals, mysticism, or obsession. It requires respect and intention. When you acknowledge dreams as meaningful communication, the subconscious responds by sending clearer messages. When you ignore them repeatedly, the messages become weaker or more chaotic. The system adapts to how it is treated. Before sleep, the mind is especially receptive. The boundary between conscious and subconscious awareness becomes thin. This is a powerful moment, not because something magical happens, but because resistance decreases. When you bring a calm, clear question into that space, you are giving the dreaming mind a direction. The key is simplicity. One question is enough. The subconscious works best with focus, not overload. When you ask a question inwardly and then release it without strain, you create the conditions for insight. Chasing answers creates tension, and tension blocks reception. Letting go allows the mind to organize information freely. The response may come as a dream, a feeling upon waking, or a sudden clarity that appears during the day. The form does not matter. The function does. When you wake up, the first moments are important. The outer world rushes in quickly if you allow it. Notifications, thoughts, responsibilities, and distractions can erase subtle inner impressions within seconds. When you pause briefly and allow memory to surface, you signal to the subconscious that its messages matter. Writing down even fragments strengthens the channel. Respect creates clarity. Some people notice that certain dreams seem to carry information they could not consciously know. A sense of warning, preparation, or timing appears before events unfold. This does not require special belief systems to understand. The subconscious is constantly collecting data, noticing patterns, and connecting dots beneath awareness. Sleep gives it the freedom to assemble those connections into coherent insight. However, this power must be approached with balance. Obsession with dreams creates anxiety. Searching for hidden meaning in every image distorts perception. Fear-based interpretation turns guidance into threat. The ethical use of the dreaming mind is grounded and practical. Dreams are meant to guide and correct, not to frighten or control. When fear enters the process, clarity fades. A dream becomes truly powerful when it leads to one clear action, not 20 interpretations, not endless speculation, one insight and one adjustment. If a dream reveals overload, the action may be to slow down. If it reveals avoidance, the action may be to face a conversation. If it reveals fear of expression, the action may be to speak honestly. Action grounds insight in reality and teaches the subconscious that its guidance creates change. When the subconscious learns that its messages are acted upon, it becomes more active in offering support. The channel strengthens through cooperation. Over time, dreams may become clearer, calmer, and more purposeful. This does not mean every dream will feel profound. Many will still be ordinary processing. What changes is your relationship to them. The dreaming mind also reveals how safe or unsafe your nervous system feels. Repeated dreams of danger, loss, or helplessness often indicate a system trained for threat. Repeated dreams of stability, movement, or resolution often indicate growing coherence. These patterns provide valuable feedback. They show you where attention is needed, not as criticism, but as information. As with the other abilities you are learning, this one does not stand alone. The dreaming mind works in harmony with inner knowing, emotional resonance, the inner image, and the inner voice. When your waking life becomes calmer and more intentional, dreams often follow. When you change what you rehearse during the day, what you see at night changes as well. The system is unified. The power of the dreaming mind is not about becoming mysterious or special. It is about becoming honest with yourself at a deeper level. It is about allowing the mind to speak without interruption and learning to listen without fear. When you do, guidance becomes quieter, clearer, and more practical. One dream, one insight, one action. That is how the channel strengthens. Over time, this quiet cooperation builds trust between your conscious choices and subconscious intelligence. And when that trust exists, life feels less chaotic and more navigable, even when it is uncertain. This is the power of the dreaming mind. Chapter 5: The Power of the Inner Voice. There is a conversation happening inside you almost all the time. Even when you are silent, even when you appear calm, even when nothing dramatic is happening on the outside, this inner voice continues to speak. It comments on what you are doing, interprets what others say, predicts what might happen next, and quietly decides what you are capable of handling. Most people are so used to this voice that they assume it is simply who they are. They rarely question it, and they almost never realize how much power it holds. This inner voice is not merely describing your life, it is directing it. The subconscious mind listens closely to the words repeated inside you, especially when those words are charged with emotion. Under stress, disappointment, fear, or pressure, the inner voice becomes louder and more influential. In those moments, whatever you say to yourself is taken as instruction. The nervous system adjusts, behavior follows, outcomes begin to align with the command being repeated. Most people did not choose their inner voice. They inherited it. It was shaped gradually through repetition, early experiences, family tone, social conditioning, authority figures, comparisons, and moments of embarrassment or failure that left emotional marks. Over time, certain phrases became familiar. Certain interpretations became automatic. Eventually, the voice sounded so natural that it was mistaken for truth. But familiarity does not equal accuracy. It only means repetition. The inner voice often disguises itself as realism. It sounds practical, cautious, or honest. It says things like, "This probably won't work," "Don't get your hopes up," or "People like me don't get ahead." These statements may feel reasonable, but they quietly limit behavior. The subconscious does not evaluate whether inner speech is fair or unfair. It only notices repetition and emotional intensity. Whatever is repeated with feeling becomes a pattern, and patterns shape behavior. The first shift in mastering the inner voice is learning to observe it rather than identify with it. The moment you believe every thought you think, you become trapped inside the narration. You argue with life from inside your own mind. You sabotage yourself while believing you are being honest. When you begin to notice the voice instead of merging with it, you create space. In that space, choice becomes possible. Patterns can be replaced. This does not happen through fantasy or exaggerated positivity. The subconscious rejects statements that feel false or disconnected from experience. Real change happens through believable authority. Authority does not mean aggression, it means calm direction. A sentence that feels grounded and slightly upgraded is far more powerful than one that sounds dramatic but empty. You do not wait to feel confident before changing your inner voice. Confidence is not the starting point. It is the result. You speak confidence inwardly with steadiness, and the nervous system follows over time. The body learns safety through repetition. The mind learns trust through consistency. Eventually, what once felt like effort begins to feel natural. The inner voice becomes powerful when it is paired with action. Words alone are not enough. The subconscious learns through proof. Each small action that matches the new inner command strengthens the pattern. Over time, this cooperation between speech and behavior builds credibility. The mind begins to believe what it hears because it sees evidence. Most people live with an inner voice that keeps them in limbo. It does not attack them directly, but it delays them endlessly. It says, maybe later, when things calm down, or once I feel ready. This voice feels harmless, but it is deeply sabotaging. The subconscious cannot build a life on uncertainty. It builds on direction. Indecision drains energy because it keeps the nervous system in a constant state of unresolved tension. Under pressure, the inner voice reveals its true nature. Two people can face the same setback, rejection, or mistake and respond very differently. One collapses internally, the other stabilizes and adapts. The difference is not intelligence or luck. It is the inner narration. One voice says, this is the end, while the other says, this is information. The circumstance is the same. The command is different. Life follows the command. Replacing the inner voice begins with identifying the dominant sentence you repeat privately. Not the words you use in public, but the sentence that appears when you are tired, stressed, or alone. This sentence may sound simple, but it carries enormous influence. It might say, nothing changes, I always mess things up, or I am behind. Awareness is the first step. You do not judge the sentence. You notice it. Awareness breaks unconscious repetition. Replacement must be precise. You do not replace a limiting sentence with its exaggerated opposite. That creates internal resistance. Instead, you replace it with a statement that feels believable and directional. If the old sentence says, nothing ever works, the new one might say, things improve when I persist. If the old sentence says, I am always behind, the new one might say, I move forward step by step, and I finish what matters. These statements are not affirmations for performance. They are commands for alignment. Timing matters. The most powerful moment to intervene is when the old voice appears. Emotional activation makes the subconscious more impressionable. This is why trauma imprints deeply, but it is also why change can happen faster than people expect. When you interrupt the old narration during a trigger and calmly replace it with a new command, the system listens. You do not argue with the old voice. Argument creates friction. You replace it. Calm repetition is more effective than emotional force. One clear sentence spoken inwardly with presence is enough. Then you follow it with a small action that confirms it. Action completes the instruction. Over time, resistance may appear. The old voice will say the new approach is fake, pointless, or ineffective. This resistance is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that the pattern is being challenged. The old voice has ruled for a long time. It does not surrender quietly. Consistency matters more than intensity. The subconscious is impressed by what is repeated calmly, not by emotional bursts. The inner voice also shapes how you see other people and life itself. If your narration frames the world as hostile, you will feel unsafe everywhere. If it frames people as selfish, you will live guarded and isolated. If it frames life as unfair, you will miss opportunities that require openness to see. Choosing one governing sentence about life can stabilize your inner climate. This sentence becomes an anchor during uncertainty. The goal is not to eliminate negative thoughts entirely. The goal is to prevent them from becoming commands. Thoughts may arise, but you decide which ones receive authority. Over time, the upgraded inner voice becomes the default. It does not shout. It does not compete. It simply guides. As the inner voice stabilizes, other abilities strengthen naturally. Inner knowing becomes clearer because mental noise decreases. Emotional resonance becomes easier to manage because internal boundaries are firmer. Focused will become sustainable because internal conflict reduces. The body relaxes because it receives consistent signals of direction rather than mixed messages. The power of the inner voice is not about controlling thoughts. It is about choosing which thoughts guide behavior. When your inner speech aligns with your values and actions, coherence emerges. Coherence creates presence. Presence creates influence, both internally and externally. This ability does not make life effortless, but it makes it navigable. You become less reactive and more deliberate. You stop waiting for motivation and start acting from direction. Over time, the nervous system learns that you can be trusted. Self-trust is built, not imagined. This is the power of the inner voice. Chapter 6. The Power of Focused Will. Willpower is often misunderstood. Many people believe it is a force you either possess or lack, something determined by personality, upbringing, or natural strength. They assume that some people are disciplined by nature while others are simply not built that way. This belief quietly undermines effort because it frames willpower as a fixed trait instead of a trainable skill. In reality, willpower is not force. It is attention without leakage. It is the ability to choose where your focus rests and to keep it there without constantly pulling it apart with doubt, distraction, and inner negotiation. Most people do not fail because they lack will. They fail because their will is exhausted by division. They decide, then reconsider. They begin, then look for reassurance. They take a step forward, then pause to see if it is working. Each time they do this, attention leaks, energy drains, momentum dissolves. Over time, they conclude that they are weak when in fact they are simply divided. A mind that is constantly reopening decisions cannot generate sustained power. Focused will begins with closure. Closure does not mean certainty about outcomes. It means certainty about direction. The sentence, "I have chosen," carries a different weight than "I will try" or "I hope." Trying keeps the exit door open. Hoping delays commitment. Choosing ends negotiation. When you choose, the inner argument stops. The nervous system relaxes not because the challenge disappears, but because the internal war ends. Decision creates coherence, and coherence restores energy. Consistency is uncomfortable because it removes options. It eliminates the mental escape routes that allow you to avoid effort. An undisciplined mind craves novelty, stimulation, and quick proof. It wants reassurance that every step is correct before fully committing. But real change rarely arrives through novelty. It arrives through repetition. Repetition trains the subconscious to accept a new normal. Once something feels normal internally, resistance decreases and effort becomes steadier. Many people confuse intensity with willpower. They believe that motivation must be high for action to be effective. This belief creates cycles of enthusiasm followed by collapse. Focused will does not rely on emotional peaks. It relies on loyalty to a direction. Loyalty means continuing even when excitement fades. It means honoring decisions even when doubt appears. Over time, loyalty builds trust between your conscious intentions and your subconscious expectations. Attention is the most valuable currency you own. Whatever you hold in attention long enough becomes a pattern. Whatever becomes a pattern becomes a result. When attention is scattered, results are scattered. When attention is steady, results accumulate. Focused will is not about doing more. It is about leaking less. It is about stopping the constant restarting that drains energy and replacing it with sustained engagement. One of the most subtle drains on willpower is constant self-checking. Many people ask themselves repeatedly whether they feel motivated, confident, or ready. Each check pulls attention away from action and back into evaluation. Evaluation has its place, but when it becomes continuous, it paralyzes movement. Focused will requires trusting the decision long enough to let effort compound. Trust grows through action, not through analysis. When attention stabilizes, presence changes. Presence is the quality people feel when you are internally aligned. You speak differently because you are no longer asking for permission internally. You move differently because your mind is not split between commitment and doubt. Others may not know why, but they sense clarity. Presence alters how conversations unfold, how opportunities appear, and how resistance responds to you. Focused will is built through small acts of loyalty. Many people make large promises to themselves and then break them. Over time, the subconscious learns that their word cannot be trusted. This erodes self-trust, which is often mistaken for lack of confidence. In reality, confidence is built by keeping small agreements consistently. When the subconscious sees that you do what you say, even in minor ways, it begins to cooperate. Micro-loyalty is more powerful than grand declarations. Choosing to focus for 10 uninterrupted minutes, completing a small task fully, or returning attention to a single intention trains the system. Each completed action reinforces the belief that direction is stable. Stability creates momentum. Momentum makes effort feel lighter. Focused will also requires acceptance of discomfort. Discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It is often a sign that something is new. When you stop negotiating with yourself, the mind protests. It misses the comfort of indecision. It resists structure because structure demands follow-through. Understanding this resistance prevents misinterpretation. You do not need to eliminate discomfort. You need to stop using it as a reason to stop. Another important aspect of focused will is containment. Containment means holding an intention internally without constantly announcing it, defending it, or seeking validation. When you leak intention through explanation and reassurance seeking, energy dissipates. Quiet commitment preserves power. This does not mean secrecy out of fear. It means focus out of respect for the process. Focused will becomes especially important during uncertainty. When outcomes are unclear, the temptation to hesitate increases. The mind wants guarantees, but guarantees are rare. Progress often requires moving without complete information. Focused will allows you to proceed based on direction rather than certainty. This is not recklessness. It is disciplined trust. Over time, holding attention steadily creates a noticeable internal force. This force is not aggression. It is coherence. Coherence aligns thought, emotion, and action. When these elements align, effort feels cleaner. Decisions feel simpler. You stop fighting yourself. This internal alignment is often mistaken by others as confidence or authority, but it is simply the absence of internal conflict. Focused will also interact with the other abilities you are developing. Inner knowing becomes easier to follow when attention is stable. Emotional resonance becomes clearer when energy is not leaking into constant reconsideration. The inner voice becomes more supportive when it no longer has to mediate endless debate. The body relaxes because it receives consistent signals of direction. One of the greatest benefits of focused will is reduction of mental fatigue. Much of mental exhaustion comes not from effort, but from indecision. Each unresolved choice drains energy. By closing decisions and committing attention, you conserve mental resources. This conservation allows you to sustain effort over longer periods without burnout. It is important to recognize that focused will is not rigidity. It does not mean refusing to adjust when new information appears. It means adjusting intentionally rather than reactively. You change course because clarity improves, not because doubt overwhelms you. This distinction preserves momentum while allowing flexibility. As focused will strengthens, outcomes begin to shift, not because the world suddenly cooperates, but because your relationship to effort changes. You become less distracted by setbacks. You recover faster from interruptions. You continue without needing constant emotional reinforcement. This steadiness compounds over time. The power of focused will is not dramatic. It does not announce itself loudly. It operates quietly through consistency. Its effects become visible through accumulation. Projects complete, skills deepen, trust builds. Life begins responding differently because you are showing up differently. Ultimately, focused will teaches you something fundamental. You are not at the mercy of fluctuating motivation. You are capable of directing attention deliberately. That capability changes how you experience effort, challenge, and progress. It replaces struggle with steadiness and reaction with direction. This is the power of focused will. Chapter 7. The Power of the Living Body. The body is consciousness made visible. It is not separate from the mind, and it is not merely a physical machine you carry through life. It is a living record of your inner world, constantly responding to your thoughts, emotions, and expectations. Every experience you have ever had has left some impression in the body, not always as a memory you can recall, but as a pattern the nervous system learned in order to survive, adapt, and function. The body stores emotional habits. Long before you think about how to respond, your body has already prepared a reaction. If you spent years bracing for criticism, your shoulders learned to tighten. If you lived under constant pressure, your breath learned to shorten. If you felt unsafe expressing yourself, your chest learned to close. These are not conscious choices. They are learned responses repeated until they became automatic. Over time, the body remembers what the mind forgets. The body also broadcasts state. Before you speak, Your posture communicates. Before you explain yourself, your breathing sets the tone. Before you decide what to do, your nervous system signals whether the world feels safe or threatening. People often believe they are reacting to life, but in many cases, life is responding to the state the body is already projecting. State is not abstract. It is physical. It is visible in movement, timing, and presence. This is why you cannot change your life while your nervous system continues rehearsing threat. You can adopt new ideas, repeat positive thoughts, and set ambitious goals. But if the body remains braced for danger, those efforts will feel heavy and inconsistent. A nervous system trained for survival will prioritize protection over growth. It will resist uncertainty, avoid exposure, and default to familiar patterns, even when those patterns no longer serve you. Many people try to change their lives through thought alone. They tell themselves they want peace, confidence, clarity, or focus, but their bodies are still rehearsing urgency, fear, and tension. Their breath is shallow, their muscles are tight, their attention is scattered. The body continues broadcasting stress while the mind speaks of calm. This mismatch creates friction. Progress feels exhausting because the system is divided. The body becomes power when you train safety, clarity, and presence. Safety does not mean comfort or avoidance. It means the nervous system is no longer interpreting every challenge as a threat. Clarity means the body is not flooded with unnecessary tension that clouds perception. Presence means attention is anchored in the current moment rather than pulled into anticipation or rumination. When these qualities are trained consistently, behavior changes naturally. Small resets repeated often are the language the body understands best. The body does not change through insight alone. It changes through repetition. A single calm breath may not transform your life, but repeated moments of regulation retrain the nervous system over time. Each reset is a signal. Each signal teaches the body that it can return to balance without waiting for external conditions to improve. State creates behavior. When the body is calm and regulated, choices feel clearer. Responses become slower and more intentional. Boundaries are easier to hold. Focus lasts longer. When the body is tense and reactive, behavior becomes impulsive, defensive, or avoidant. The same person placed in different states will act like two entirely different individuals. Behavior creates results. Results reinforce state. This loop operates constantly, whether you are aware of it or not. The question is not whether the loop exists, but whether you are training it deliberately or allowing it to run on old patterns. The power of the living body lies in recognizing that you can intervene directly in this loop by changing state at the physical level. One of the most important realizations is that emotions are not just mental experiences, they are physiological events. Anxiety is not only a thought, it is a breathing pattern, a muscle contraction, a chemical response. Calm is not only a mindset, it is a slower breath, a relaxed jaw, a grounded posture. When you learn to work with the body, you stop asking the mind to do all the work alone. The body is always speaking. Sensations in the chest, stomach, throat, and limbs are signals, not inconveniences. Tightness often indicates resistance or fear. Heaviness may signal overload. Warmth and ease often accompany alignment. These sensations are not messages to panic. They are information to interpret. When you stop ignoring them, the body becomes a compass rather than an obstacle. Many people disconnect from their bodies because they associate sensation with discomfort. They live primarily in thought, using distraction to avoid feeling. Over time, this disconnection reduces awareness. Signals become louder because they are not being acknowledged. Stress accumulates because it is never released. Reconnecting with the body is not about becoming overly focused on sensation. It is about restoring communication. The living body also plays a crucial role in emotional regulation. When you feel overwhelmed, the fastest way back to clarity is often physical, not mental. A change in breathing, posture, or movement can interrupt a spiraling pattern more effectively than analysis. This is not because the mind is weak, but because the body sits closer to the root of the response. Repeated regulation teaches the nervous system a new baseline. Over time, the body learns that calm is available. It learns that tension is not permanent. It learns that presence is safe. This learning does not happen through explanation. It happens through experience. Each successful return to balance becomes evidence the system remembers. As the body becomes more regulated, intuition sharpens. Emotional resonance becomes easier to manage. Focused will becomes more sustainable. The inner voice becomes calmer. These abilities are interconnected. When the body is constantly dysregulated, every other inner skill becomes harder to access. When the body is supported, everything else strengthens naturally. It is also important to recognize that the body holds boundaries. When boundaries are weak, the body often shows it first through fatigue, tightness, or irritability. Learning to listen to these signals allows you to adjust before burnout occurs. Respecting the body's limits is not weakness, it is intelligence. The living body is also a transmitter. Your state influences others, whether you intend it or not. Calm presence can stabilize a room. Tension can spread silently. This is not about responsibility for others' emotions, but awareness of influence. When your body is coherent, interactions change without effort. Conversations feel easier. Resistance decreases. Timing improves. Training the body does not require extreme practices. It requires consistency. Gentle awareness practiced daily is more powerful than intense effort practiced rarely. Simple regulation repeated often creates lasting change. Over time, what once required effort becomes automatic. The nervous system adapts. One of the most important shifts is realizing that safety can be cultivated internally. Many people wait for circumstances to improve before they relax. This keeps the system locked in vigilance. When you learn to create safety through regulation, you free yourself from that dependence. You become capable of meeting uncertainty without collapsing. As you integrate this power, you may notice subtle changes. You recover faster from stress. You pause before reacting. You feel more present in your body. These are signs that the system is reorganizing. Progress is not dramatic. It is steady. The power of the living body reminds you that change does not happen only through thinking differently. It happens through being differently. When state changes, behavior follows. When behavior follows, results change. This sequence cannot be bypassed. The body is not an obstacle to overcome. It is a partner to train. When you work with it rather than against it, effort becomes lighter and progress becomes sustainable. This cooperation is what allows inner change to take root and remain stable over time. This is the power of the living body. Closing, the 7-day covenant. As this audiobook comes to a close, There is one final instruction that matters more than all the ideas you have heard so far. Do not try to master everything. The human mind is drawn to inspiration, to the excitement of new understanding, and to the feeling of possibility that comes from hearing something meaningful. But inspiration alone does not create change. The subconscious does not transform because it was impressed once. It transforms because something was repeated long enough to become familiar, trusted, and normal. For the next 7 days, you are not asked to improve your entire life. You are not asked to become perfect, disciplined, or fearless. You are asked to make a simple covenant with yourself. For 7 days, you will choose one inner power and train it deliberately, not with intensity, with loyalty. Loyalty means you return to it even when you forget. Loyalty means you continue even when it feels ordinary. Loyalty means you stay consistent without needing excitement or proof. Change does not arrive dramatically. It rarely announces itself. It does not usually come with a sudden transformation or a clear moment where everything feels different. Real change arrives quietly. It appears as clearer decisions. It shows up as steadier reactions. It reveals itself as a subtle sense of self-trust returning after years of inner conflict. These shifts may seem small, but they are not. They are the foundation upon which everything else is built. The first stage of this covenant is awareness. Awareness is not judgment. It is not criticism. It is not analysis. It is simply noticing what is already happening. You notice the old inner sentence when it appears. You notice the familiar stress response in the body. You notice the moment attention leaks into distraction. You notice the emotional pattern that repeats. Awareness alone begins to loosen the grip of unconscious habits because patterns lose power once they are seen clearly. The second stage is interruption. Interruption does not require force. It requires timing. You interrupt once, not constantly. One breath reset, one change in posture, one upgraded inner sentence, one return to center, one deliberate pause instead of a reflexive reaction. Interruption creates a gap, and in that gap, choice becomes possible. You are no longer being carried entirely by momentum. You are participating. The third stage is repetition. Repetition is where power is built. Not dramatic repetition, not obsessive repetition, calm repetition. The subconscious learns through consistency, not through intensity. Each time you repeat the interruption, the nervous system learns a new option. Each time you return to center, the system learns that regulation is available. Over time, repetition replaces effort. What once felt deliberate begins to feel natural. During these 7 days, resistance may appear. This is normal. The old identity does not disappear quietly. It will suggest that this is not working, that it is too simple, or that you should wait until conditions improve. Do not argue with these thoughts. Do not fight them. Simply continue. Resistance is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that the pattern is being challenged. Around the middle of the week, you may notice something subtle. Your reactions may soften. Your decisions may feel cleaner. You may pause more often before responding. You may feel slightly more grounded, even when circumstances have not changed. This is not imagination. This is the system recalibrating. Inner order is being restored before outer results appear. By the end of the 7 days, something important happens. The subconscious begins to recognize that this is not a temporary experiment. It begins to accept a new direction. When the subconscious accepts direction, It stops resisting. It starts cooperating. This is when change becomes easier, not because life becomes simpler, but because you are no longer fighting yourself internally. Your life is not shaped primarily by what happens to you. Events matter, but they are not the main influence. Your life is shaped by what happens inside you in response. Two people can face the same week, the same challenges, and the same uncertainty, and walk away with entirely different futures. One rehearses fear, hesitation, and self-doubt. The other rehearses clarity, direction, and presence. The outer world may look the same, but the inner command is different. Life follows the command. Returning to center is not an escape from reality. It is a way of meeting reality without losing yourself. Center is where you are no longer pulled entirely by emotion or distraction. It is where you can sense, decide, and act with coherence. Returning to center is something you will do many times, not once. Each return strengthens the ability. Each return restores clarity. Choosing your command is choosing how you speak to yourself when it matters most. The command is not a slogan. It is a sentence that guides your response under pressure. It may remind you to slow down, to persist, to respect yourself, or to stay present. The right command does not create excitement. It creates stability. Stability allows progress. Acting from the version of you that is becoming does not require waiting until you feel ready. Readiness is a feeling. Discipline is a decision. The future version of you is not built by waiting for motivation. It is built by small actions taken consistently from a clearer inner state. Each action reinforces identity. Identity reinforces behavior. Behavior shapes outcomes. Remember that this process is not about perfection. You will forget. You will react. You will fall back into old patterns at times. That does not erase progress. The only thing that matters is returning. Returning to awareness. Returning to center. Returning to the command. Each return strengthens the system. This is the remembering. Not remembering facts or ideas, but remembering how to govern the inner world. Remembering that attention is power. Remembering that state shapes behavior. Remembering that you are not helpless inside your own experience. You are not meant to control life, but you are meant to participate consciously in how you meet it. As you move forward, you do not need to carry everything from this audiobook. Carry one thing, practice one power. Let it become familiar. Let it become reliable. From that stability, other changes will emerge naturally. Growth does not need to be rushed. It needs to be sustained. If this audiobook has helped you, do not let it remain an idea. Return to it when needed. Not for entertainment, but for reinforcement. The future is not built by what you consume once. It is built by what you practice until it becomes part of you. Return to center. Choose your command. Act from the version of you that is becoming. That is the remembering.